Eleanor Matthews sat on the wooden floor of her tiny cabin, staring at the pile of papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. Each piece told the same story: debt, debt, and more debt. Her father had been gone for 3 weeks now, buried under the frozen ground behind their home. The winter of 1876 was proving to be one of the harshest the Dakota Territory had ever seen. She pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders. The fire in the small stove was dying, and she had maybe 2 more logs left. After that, she would have to burn the furniture. The thought made her stomach twist with worry. "Papa, what am I supposed to do now?" she whispered to the empty room. The silence that answered her was colder than the wind howling outside. At 19, Eleanor had never been alone like this. Her mother had died when she was 12, and since then it had been just her and Papa working their small piece of land. Now she was completely on her own. A loud knock on the door made her jump. Her heart started beating fast. Nobody came calling, in weather like this, unless something was very wrong. She stood up slowly, her legs shaky from sitting on the cold floor for so long. "Miss Matthews?" A deep voice called from outside. "It's Tom Bradley from the general store." Eleanor knew Tom. He was a kind man who had always been patient when Papa was late paying for supplies. She opened the door just enough to see his red, wind-burned face. "Tom, what brings you out in this storm?" Tom shifted his weight from one foot to the other, looking uncomfortable. "Eleanor, I hate to bother you, especially now, but I got some men here who say your father owed them money. They're asking questions about the land." Behind Tom, Eleanor could see 2 other men standing by their horses. They looked cold and angry. One of them was Benjamin Frost, who owned the largest ranch in the area. The other was a stranger with mean eyes and a cruel smile. "How much money?" Eleanor asked, though she already feared the answer. Tom pulled out a crumpled paper from his coat pocket. "Near about $800, they say, for seed equipment and a loan your pa took out last spring. $800 might as well have been 8,000. Eleanor felt the world spinning around her. She had maybe $20 hidden in a jar under her bed. The land itself was worth something, but not nearly enough to pay off that kind of debt. "What happens if I can't pay?" she asked quietly. The stranger behind Tom spoke up, his voice rough and unpleasant. "Then the land becomes ours, Missy, and you'll need to find somewhere else to go." "In the middle of winter?" Eleanor's voice came out smaller than she wanted it to. Benjamin Frost stepped forward. He was a large man with a gray beard and cold blue eyes. "Now, Eleanor, nobody wants to see you suffer. You're a pretty young woman. I'm sure we can work something out." The way he looked at her made Eleanor's skin crawl. She had heard stories about what happened to women who had no family to protect them. Some ended up working in the saloons in town, serving drinks to rough men and worse. Others simply disappeared. "I need time to think," Eleanor said, starting to close the door. "You got 3 days," the stranger called out. "Then we come back for what's ours." Eleanor shut the door and leaned against it, her whole body shaking. 3 days. What could she possibly do in 3 days? That night she barely slept. Every sound outside made her think the men had come back early. When morning finally came, she bundled up in her warmest clothes and walked the mile into town. The settlement of Cedar Falls wasn't much to look at. A main street with a dozen buildings, including Tom's store, a saloon, a church, and a few houses. Most of the people who lived here were like her father, trying to make a living from the hard prairie soil. She went to the church first. Reverend Williams was a good man who had spoken kindly at her father's funeral. Maybe he would have some advice. She found him in the church reading his Bible by the window where the light was best. "Eleanor, child, how are you holding up?" She told him about the debt and the 3-day deadline. His face grew more worried with every word. $800, he said slowly. "That's more money than most families see in 2 years. What can I do, Reverend? I have nowhere to go." The old preacher was quiet for a long time. Finally, he sighed deeply. "There might be one option, but you won't like it. Tell me. There's been talk in town about the Lakota tribe that camps near Willow Creek. Their leader, a man called Spotted Eagle, has been asking about taking a wife." Eleanor felt her blood turn to ice. An Indian? You want me to marry an Indian? Now before you say no, listen to me, Reverend Williams said quickly. This isn't like the stories you hear. Spotted Eagle is an educated man. He speaks English well. He's looking for a proper marriage, not what you might be thinking. Eleanor's mind raced. She had grown up hearing terrible stories about Indians, how they scalped people and burned homes, how they captured white women and did unspeakable things to them. Every child in the territory knew to be afraid of them. He's a savage, she whispered. Is he? Or is that just what we've been told to think? The Reverend leaned forward. Eleanor, I've met this man. He's intelligent, well-spoken, and honorable. He lost his wife 2 years ago to sickness and wants a family again. But why would he want to marry me? A white woman? His first wife was half white. He's comfortable with both worlds. And you need protection. Marriage would give you that. Eleanor stood up quickly, pacing to the window. Outside, snow was falling again. In 3 days, she would have nothing. No home, no family, no protection. In a place like this, a woman alone didn't last long. What would happen to me? She asked quietly. You would live with his people. Learn their ways. Be his wife in truth. The Reverend paused. Eleanor, I know it sounds frightening, but consider the alternative. She thought about Benjamin Frost's cold eyes and cruel smile, about working in the saloon or worse, about wandering the prairie with no food or shelter until the cold took her. How would this work? Would someone talk to him for me? I could arrange a meeting. But Eleanor, you need to be sure. Once you agree to this, there's no going back. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine it, living in a teepee instead of a house, eating strange food, being touched by a man she had never met, a man whose people she had been taught to fear her entire life. But what choice did she have? Set up the meeting, she said finally. 2 days later, Eleanor found herself sitting in Tom's store, waiting. Reverend Williams sat beside her, trying to look encouraging. Tom busied himself arranging items on his shelves, but she could tell he was nervous too. When the door opened, Eleanor's heart nearly stopped. The man who entered was not what she had expected. He was tall and strong-looking, with long black hair braided down his back. His clothes were a mix of traditional Indian clothing and white man's gear, buckskin pants and shirt, but also a wool coat and leather boots. His face was serious, but not cruel. Reverend Williams, he said in clear English, thank you for arranging this meeting. His voice was deep and calm. Eleanor had expected broken English or maybe no English at all. Instead, he spoke like an educated man. Spotted Eagle, this is Eleanor Matthews, the young woman I told you about. Spotted Eagle turned to look at her. His eyes were dark brown and intelligent. Eleanor felt like he was seeing right through her, reading all her fears and doubts. Miss Matthews, he said with a slight nod, I am sorry for the loss of your father. Thank you, Eleanor managed to say. Spotted Eagle pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. Reverend Williams has told me about your situation. You need protection, and I am in need of a wife. Perhaps we can help each other. Eleanor stared at him. She had expected someone frightening, maybe even violent. This man seemed calm and reasonable. I don't understand, she said. Why would you want to marry someone like me? Someone who isn't from your people? My first wife was the daughter of a French trader and a Lakota woman. She understood both worlds, and it made our life richer. You are young and strong. You can learn our ways and perhaps teach us some of yours. I don't know anything about your ways. I don't know how to live like your people do. You will learn. My grandmother and the other women will teach you. But first you must decide if you are willing. Eleanor looked at her hands folded in her lap. They were shaking slightly. What would you expect from me? As your wife? Spotted Eagle was quiet for a moment. I would expect you to share my lodge, to help with the work that needs doing, to be a part of my family. In time, if the spirits are willing, to give me children. The way he said it was so matter-of-fact, so normal, as if he were talking about any marriage between any two people. I have to be honest, Eleanor said, forcing herself to look at him. I'm scared of you, of your people. I've heard stories. What kind of stories? That you're violent, that you hurt white people, that you... She couldn't finish the sentence. Spotted Eagle nodded slowly. And I have heard stories about white people, that they are greedy and dishonest, that they break their promises and take what doesn't belong to them. Some of these stories are true. Some are not. People are just people, Miss Matthews. Some good, some bad. But your people are at war with mine. Some of my people are at war with some of your people. But not all wars are the same, and not all people choose to fight. He leaned forward slightly. I choose peace when I can. I choose to build a life rather than destroy one. Eleanor felt some. The wedding ceremony was unlike anything Eleanor had ever imagined. It took place as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The Lakota camp was larger than she had expected, with dozens of teepees arranged in a circle, near Willow Creek. Eleanor wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had belonged to her mother. Some of the Lakota women had braided sweet grass and small flowers into her hair. She felt strange and out of place, but not unwelcome. Spotted Eagle wore traditional clothing, a beautiful shirt decorated with quill work and beads and buckskin leggings. He looked like someone from a completely different world, which Eleanor supposed he was. The ceremony involved prayers and rituals she didn't understand. An elderly man who seemed to be a spiritual leader spoke in Lakota while holding a sacred pipe. Eleanor couldn't follow the words, but the tone was respectful and solemn. When it was over, people approached them with gifts and good wishes. Most spoke only Lakota, but they smiled at her and touched her hands gently. A few spoke broken English, welcoming her to their family. They are happy for us, Spotted Eagle explained quietly. A wedding brings joy to the whole community. Eleanor nodded, still feeling overwhelmed by everything that was happening. Just that morning, she had been a desperate woman facing homelessness. Now she was married to a man she barely knew, surrounded by people whose language she couldn't speak. The evening grew darker. Eleanor's nervousness increased. She knew what was expected on a wedding night. Her mother had explained the basics before she died, and Eleanor had overheard enough conversations between married women to understand what happened between husband and wife. But this felt different, more frightening. She was about to share the most intimate moment possible with a complete stranger, a man whose culture and ways were foreign to everything she had known. When Spotted Eagle led her toward his teepee, Eleanor's hands began to shake. The teepee was larger than she had expected, beautifully decorated with painted designs. Inside, it was warm and comfortable. Buffalo robes covered the ground, and a small fire burned in the center, sending smoke up through the opening at the top. Eleanor stood near the entrance, unsure of what to do or where to go. Spotted Eagle moved around the space easily, adding wood to the fire and arranging things for the night. "You are frightened?" he said finally, not looking at her. "Yes," Eleanor admitted. There was no point in lying. "Of me, or of what you think I will do?" Eleanor considered the question. "Both, I think." Spotted Eagle straightened up and turned to face her. In the firelight, his features looked softer, less intimidating than they had during the day. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a comfortable spot near the fire. "We should talk." Eleanor sat down carefully, pulling her skirts around her legs. Spotted Eagle sat across from her, far enough away that she didn't feel crowded. "In my culture," he began, "a marriage is not just about two people. It affects the whole community. That means it must be built on respect and understanding, not just desire." Eleanor wasn't sure what he was trying to tell her. "What I mean," Spotted Eagle continued, "is that I will not touch you tonight, or any night until you truly want me to." Eleanor stared at him in surprise. "But we're married now. Isn't it your right?" "Rights and respect are different things. Yes, by the laws of both our peoples, you are my wife. But being my wife should not mean being my prisoner." The relief that washed over Eleanor was so strong it almost made her dizzy. She had been preparing herself for something that would be painful and frightening. Instead, this man was offering her time and patience. "I don't understand," she said. "Don't you want..." I mean, isn't that why men get married? Spotted Eagle smiled slightly. I want a partner, not a victim. I want a woman who chooses to be with me, not one who submits because she has no choice. But I did have a choice. I chose to marry you. You chose marriage to me over losing your home and being at the mercy of cruel men. That's not the same as choosing me because you want to share your life with me. Eleanor felt something inside her chest loosen. This man understood her situation better than she had realized. He knew exactly why she had agreed to marry him, and he wasn't going to take advantage of her desperation. What happens now? She asked. Now we learn about each other. We talk. We share our stories. We become friends if we can, and someday if you decide you want more than friendship, you will let me know. What if that day never comes? Spotted Eagle was quiet for a moment. Then we will have a marriage of companionship and respect. There are worse things. They sat, in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle and the sounds of the camp settling down for the night. Will you tell me about your first wife? Eleanor asked finally. Pain flickered across Spotted Eagle's face. Her name was Dancing Bird. She was 22 when she died of the fever that swept through our camp 2 winters ago. I'm sorry. You must miss her very much. I do. She was everything good in my life. Kind, funny, beautiful. She could make me laugh even when times were hard. Eleanor felt a stab of something that might have been jealousy. How could she ever compare to a woman who sounded so perfect? Do you think you'll ever love someone else the way you loved her? Spotted Eagle looked at her thoughtfully. I don't know. Love like that comes only once for some people. For others, the heart finds new ways to care. I've never been in love, Eleanor admitted. I thought maybe I was once with a boy back home, but it wasn't real love. Just wanting something I couldn't have. What happened? He married someone else. Someone with more money and better prospects. Eleanor shrugged. It probably worked out for the best. I don't think we really knew each other very well. Love takes time, Spotted Eagle said. People think it happens all at once, like lightning. Sometimes it does, but usually it grows slowly, like a plant. First comes friendship, then trust, then deeper feelings. Is that how it was with Dancing Bird? No, Spotted Eagle smiled sadly. With her it was lightning. I saw her at a trading post when I was 18, and I knew immediately that I wanted to spend my life with her. But that was unusual, I think. Eleanor found herself curious about this woman who had captured Spotted Eagle's heart so completely. What was she like? She was small and quick, always moving, always busy with something. She loved to sing while she worked. She could tan a hide better than women twice her age, and she made the most beautiful beadwork I ever saw. She was also stubborn as a mule when she thought she was right about something. The way he spoke about Dancing Bird made Eleanor feel both sad and envious. Would anyone ever speak about her with that kind of love and warmth? You're thinking that I will always compare you to her, Spotted Eagle said, reading her expression. Accurately, won't you? Probably at first, but Eleanor, you are not meant to replace Dancing Bird. You are meant to be yourself. Different people bring different gifts to our lives. What if I don't have any gifts to bring? Everyone has gifts. You just haven't discovered yours yet. As the night grew later, Spotted Eagle showed Eleanor how the teepee was arranged. There were sleeping areas on opposite sides with the fire in the center. Personal belongings were stored in neat bundles along the walls. This will be your space, he said, indicating a comfortable area with soft furs and blankets. I sleep on the other side. In the morning, I will ask my grandmother to come and begin teaching you our ways. Eleanor arranged her few belongings in her new space. It felt strange to be setting up house with a man she had known for only 3 days. Spotted Eagle, she said, as they prepared for sleep. Why did you really agree to marry me? A white woman with no skills and no knowledge of your people? He banked the fire carefully before answering. Because you were brave enough to ask for help and honest enough to admit your fears. Those are good qualities in any person. But surely, there were women in your own tribe who would have married you. There were. But I wasn't ready to remarry within my own people. Too many memories, too much pain. You represent a new beginning." Eleanor lay down on her sleeping furs, still fully dressed. Across the teepee, she could hear Spotted Eagle settling down for the night. The space between them felt vast, but also safe. "Good night, Eleanor," he said quietly. "Good night," she replied. For the first time in weeks, Eleanor fell asleep without worrying about what the next day would bring. She was still in a strange place with a strange man, but she was warm and safe and protected. For now, that was enough. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the smell of coffee and food cooking. Spotted Eagle was already up, dressed, and tending a small fire outside the teepee. He looked relaxed and comfortable, like a man going about his normal morning routine. "Did you sleep well?" he asked when he saw her emerge from the teepee. "Better than I expected," Eleanor admitted. "My grandmother will be here soon to help you. Her name is White Moon Woman. She speaks some English and she's very patient with people who are learning." As if summoned by his words, an elderly woman appeared. She was small and wrinkled, with gray hair braided with strips of colored cloth. Her eyes were bright and intelligent, and she looked Eleanor up and down with obvious curiosity. "So," she said in accented but clear English, "you are the one who married my grandson." "Yes, ma'am," Eleanor replied, unsure of the proper way to address this woman. Spring came slowly to the Dakota territory, but when it finally arrived, it brought changes that Eleanor could never have imagined. The harsh winter that had trapped her in desperation seemed like a distant memory as she watched the prairie come, alive with green grass and wildflowers. Eleanor had been living with the Lakota for 4 months now, and the woman who had once trembled at the thought of marrying an Indian was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, and surprisingly, happy. "You walk differently now," White Moon Woman observed one morning as they gathered early spring plants for medicine and food. "What do you mean?" Eleanor asked, kneeling beside a patch of wild onions. "When you first came, you walked like a deer, ready to run. Now you walk like you belong here." Eleanor paused in her gathering to consider this. It was true. She no longer felt like an outsider in the camp. The other women had accepted her. The children played games with her, and even the men nodded respectfully when they passed her. "I suppose I do feel like I belong here," Eleanor said, surprising herself with the admission. "Good. Belonging is not about blood or the color of your skin. It's about your heart." Eleanor had learned so much from White Moon Woman over the winter, not just practical things like how to tan hides, prepare traditional foods, and make clothing, but deeper lessons about life and family and what it meant to be part of a community. The Lakota way of life was different from everything Eleanor had known, but it wasn't savage or primitive like the stories claimed. It was simply different. In many ways, it seemed more sensible and peaceful than the white settlements she had known. "White Moon Woman," Eleanor said as they continued their gathering, "can I ask you something personal?" "Ask." "Why did you accept me so easily? I thought you might resent Spotted Eagle marrying outside the tribe." The old woman was quiet for several minutes, filling her basket with plants. Finally, she sat back on her heels and looked at Eleanor seriously. "My son, Spotted Eagle's father, was killed by white soldiers when Spotted Eagle was 15. I had every reason to hate all white people. For a long time I did." Eleanor felt her stomach clench with guilt and sadness. "But then, White Moon Woman continued, I realized that hating an entire people for the actions of some was the same foolishness that made those soldiers kill my son. People are individuals. Some are good, some are bad, regardless of what they look like. But surely some people in the tribe disagreed with Spotted Eagle's choice? Of course. Just as some white people would disagree with your choice. But wise, people look at actions, not appearance. You came here frightened and alone, but you didn't complain or demand special treatment. You worked hard to learn our ways. You showed respect for our customs even when they seemed strange to you. That matters more than the color of your skin." Eleanor felt a warm glow of pride at the old woman's words. She had worked hard to fit in, and it meant everything to know that her efforts had been noticed and appreciated. As they walked back to camp, Eleanor reflected on how much her perspective had changed. When she first arrived, everything had seemed foreign and frightening. Now she understood the rhythms of camp life, the importance of cooperation and sharing, the deep spiritual connection the Lakota felt with the land and all living things. She had also come to understand Spotted Eagle better. Living closely with someone for months had shown her sides of him that their brief courtship couldn't reveal. He was patient not just with her, but with everyone. He listened more than he spoke. He made decisions carefully, considering how they would affect not just himself but his whole community. He was also funny in a quiet way that Eleanor found increasingly appealing. He would make small observations about daily life that would leave her smiling for hours. He told stories about his childhood that painted pictures of a boy who was curious, adventurous, and occasionally mischievous. Most importantly, he had kept every promise he made to her. He treated her with respect and kindness. He protected her from those who might judge her harshly. He never pressured her for more than she was ready to give. But as spring progressed, Eleanor found herself thinking more and more about what she might be ready to give. It started with small things. She began to notice the way the firelight played across Spotted Eagle's features when he told stories in the evening. She started paying attention to the strength in his hands when he worked on weapons or tools. She found herself disappointed when tribal duties kept him away from their teepee for several days at a time. The change in her feelings was gradual, like the season itself. But one morning in late April, Eleanor woke up and realized with startling clarity that she was no longer just grateful to Spotted Eagle. She was attracted to him. The realization left her confused and a little frightened. Physical attraction was something she had never really experienced before. The boy back home she had thought she loved had been more of a romantic fantasy than real desire. This felt different, more immediate and intense. "You're distracted today," White Moon Woman commented as Eleanor dropped a bowl of berries for the third time that morning. "I'm sorry. I guess my mind is somewhere else." White Moon Woman gave her a knowing look. "Somewhere else? Or on someone else?" Eleanor felt her cheeks burn. "I don't know what you mean. Child, I've been watching people fall in love for 70 years. I know the signs." Eleanor sat down heavily on a fallen log, abandoning all pretense. "Is it that obvious?" "To me, yes, but then I've been waiting for this to happen." "You have?" "Of course. You're a healthy young woman married to a good man. It was only a matter of time before your heart caught up with your situation." "But what do I do about it?" Eleanor asked plaintively. "I don't know anything about being with a man that way." White Moon Woman sat down beside her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." "Nothing." "I don't know." Eleanor buried her face in her hands. "I'm scared that I won't know what to do, or that it will hurt, or that he'll be disappointed in me. Those are normal fears for any young woman, white or Lakota, but you're worrying about the wrong things." "What should I be worrying about?" "Nothing. Love between a man and woman should not be something you worry about. It should be something you look forward to." Eleanor peeked at the old woman through her fingers. "How can I not worry? I don't know anything." "Knowledge comes with experience. What matters more is trust and caring. Do you trust my grandson?" "Yes." "Do you care for him?" "Yes, more than I expected to." "Then the rest will take care of itself." White Moon Woman patted Eleanor's knee. "But first you need to tell him how you feel." That evening, Eleanor sat by the fire trying to work up the courage to speak to Spotted Eagle about her changing feelings. He seemed to sense her nervousness because he kept glancing at her with concern. "Is something wrong?" he finally asked. "No." "Yes. Maybe." Eleanor put down the moccasin she was decorating with beadwork. "I need to tell you something, but I don't know how." Spotted Eagle set aside the arrow he was fletching and gave her his full attention. "Just say it simply." Eleanor took a deep breath. I think I'm ready to be your wife. In all ways." The words hung in the air between them. Spotted Eagle didn't respond immediately, and Eleanor began to panic. Maybe she had misread the situation. Maybe he was no longer interested in that kind. of relationship with her. Eleanor, he said finally, are you saying this because you feel you should? Or because you want to? Because I want to. At least, I think I do. Eleanor twisted her hands in her lap. I know I care about you more than I did when we first married. And I know I trust you completely, and lately I've been thinking about what it would be like to be closer to you. Spotted Eagle was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. Eleanor's anxiety increased with each passing moment. I need you to be sure, he said finally. Once we cross that line, we can't go back to the way things were. I know. I also need you to understand something. My feelings for you have been growing too. If we become husband and wife in truth, it won't just be physical for me. It will mean that I'm opening my heart to love again. Eleanor felt her pulse quicken. Are you saying you could love me? I'm saying I think I already do. Differently than I loved Dancing Bird, but just as deeply. The confession took Eleanor's breath away. She had hoped he cared for her, but love was more than she had dared to imagine. I think I love you too, she whispered. Spotted Eagle moved around the fire to sit beside her. He reached out slowly and touched her face gently with his fingertips. Are you sure you're ready for this? Eleanor leaned into his touch. His hand was warm and calloused from work, but gentle. I'm sure. What happened next was nothing like the violent, painful encounter Eleanor had been dreading all those months ago. Spotted Eagle took his time, making sure she was comfortable with each step. He kissed her softly, touched her carefully, and whispered gentle words of encouragement and affection. When it was over, Eleanor lay in his arms feeling amazed and grateful. There had been some discomfort, but no real pain. More importantly, there had been tenderness and connection and a sense of finally becoming complete. Are you all right? Spotted Eagle asked quietly, stroking her hair. More than all right, Eleanor murmured against his chest. I had no idea it could be like that. Like what? The trouble began on a hot July morning when 3 riders approached the Lakota camp. Eleanor was working with the other women, preparing buffalo hide for winter clothing, when she heard the commotion. Children ran to hide behind their mothers, and the men quickly gathered their weapons. Eleanor shaded her eyes against the bright sun and felt her heart sink when she recognized one of the riders. It was her uncle, Thomas Matthews, her father's older brother. She hadn't seen him since she was 12 years old, but his stern face and disapproving expression were exactly as she remembered. Beside him rode a man in a dark suit who looked like a lawyer or government official. The third man was a soldier, in a blue uniform, his hand resting casually on his pistol. Spotted Eagle appeared at Eleanor's side, his face grim. Do you know these men? One of them is my uncle, my father's brother. What does he want here? Eleanor had a terrible feeling she already knew. The 3 men dismounted and approached the center of the camp where the tribal leaders were gathering. Thomas Matthews looked around with obvious disgust. His nose wrinkled as if he smelled something unpleasant. I'm looking for my niece, Eleanor Matthews, he announced loudly. I have reason to believe she's being held here against her will. Spotted Eagle stepped forward. I am Spotted Eagle. Eleanor is my wife. She is here by her own choice. Thomas Matthews looked at Spotted Eagle with undisguised hatred. You're the savage who kidnapped her. Where is she? Eleanor felt anger rise in her chest at her uncle's words and tone. She stepped out from behind Spotted Eagle, ignoring his protective gesture. I'm here, Uncle Thomas, she said clearly, and I wasn't kidnapped. I chose to marry Spotted Eagle. Thomas Matthews stared at her in shock. Eleanor knew she must look very different from the last time he had seen her. Her skin was tanned from months of outdoor work. Her hair was braided in the Lakota style, with beads and feathers woven through it. She wore a beautiful buckskin dress that White Moon Woman had helped her make, decorated with intricate beadwork. Good God, Eleanor, what have they done to you? Thomas's voice was horrified. You look like one of them. I am one of them, Eleanor replied calmly. This is my family now. The man in the suit stepped forward. Miss Matthews, I'm attorney William Harrison from Chicago. Your uncle has hired me to secure your release from this situation. We have legal papers that will annul your marriage to this Indian and restore your freedom. I don't need to be released. I'm exactly where I want to be. Eleanor, you don't understand, Thomas said, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. These people have obviously corrupted your mind somehow. You're not thinking clearly. Eleanor felt Spotted Eagle tense beside her, but he remained silent, letting her handle the situation herself. My mind is perfectly clear, Uncle Thomas. Clearer than it's been in years. This is ridiculous, Thomas snapped. Eleanor, you're coming with us right now. I won't allow my brother's daughter to live like a savage married to a heathen. You won't allow? Eleanor's voice grew cold. You have no authority over me. I'm a married woman and I choose to stay with my husband. The soldier spoke for the first time. Ma'am, if you're being coerced or threatened, we can protect you. Just say the word. Eleanor looked around at the faces surrounding them. She saw Spotted Eagle, his dark eyes filled with love and concern. She saw White Moon Woman standing proudly despite her recent illness. She saw the other women who had become her friends and sisters, the children who played games with her, the men who respected her as Spotted Eagle's wife. The only people threatening me are the three of you, she said firmly. Attorney Harrison pulled out a set of official-looking papers. Miss Matthews, I have here a court order declaring your marriage invalid under federal law. Marriages between whites and Indians are not legally recognized. Then your laws are wrong, Eleanor said simply. The law is the law, Harrison replied. You will come with us willingly, or we will take you by force if necessary. That was when Spotted Eagle finally spoke, his voice deadly quiet. You will not touch my wife. The soldier's hand moved to his gun. Don't threaten us, Indian. Suddenly, Eleanor found herself surrounded by Lakota warriors, all armed and ready to fight. The tension in the air was so thick it was hard to breathe. Stop. Eleanor stepped between the two groups. Please, just stop. She turned to face her uncle. Uncle Thomas, why are you really here? You haven't contacted me once since Papa died. You didn't come to his funeral. You didn't offer to help when I was about to lose the farm. Why do you care what happens to me now? Thomas's face reddened. Because you're family, Eleanor. Because you're a Matthews, and Matthews don't live like heathens. That's not the real reason, is it? Eleanor studied his face carefully. This is about the land, isn't it? The homestead. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Your father's property rightfully belongs to the family now that you've abandoned your responsibilities. Ah. Eleanor nodded. There it is. You want Papa's land, but you can't claim it as long as I'm alive and married. If I'm declared incompetent or my marriage is invalid, then the property reverts to you as the nearest male relative. This isn't about money, Eleanor, isn't it? Then why bring a lawyer and a soldier? Why not come alone and ask me to return because you're worried about me? Thomas had no answer for that. Attorney Harrison cleared his throat. Regardless of motivations, Miss Matthews, the legal situation remains the same. Your marriage is not valid under federal law, and your uncle has the right to petition for guardianship if you're deemed unable to make rational decisions. And living with Indians is proof that I'm irrational? Any reasonable person would agree that it is, yes. Eleanor felt something snap inside her. All the anger and frustration she had been suppressing boiled over. Reasonable? You want to talk about reasonable? Her voice rose. Let me tell you what's reasonable. When I was starving and homeless with creditors about to seize everything I owned, not one white person offered to help me. Not one. But Spotted Eagle offered me protection and marriage and a place in his family. She gestured around the camp. These people took me in when I had nothing. They taught me skills and gave me purpose. They treated me with kindness and respect. My husband has never raised his hand to me in anger, never forced me to do anything against my will, never made me feel ashamed or worthless. Eleanor's voice grew stronger with each word. You call them savages, but they're more civilized than any white people I've ever known. They share what they have with those in need. They respect their elders and care for their children. They don't destroy the land for profit or break their promises when it's convenient. Thomas Matthews looked stunned by her passionate defense of the Lakota. Eleanor, they've obviously filled your head with nonsense. Have they? Then tell me, Uncle Thomas, when my father was struggling to pay his debts, did you offer to help? When I was about to lose my home, did you send money or invite me to live with you? When I was desperate and alone, where was the Christian charity I was taught to expect from my own family? Thomas had no answer. Eleanor turned to the lawyer. And you, sir, you speak of laws and rationality. But are your laws rational? Is it rational to declare that love between two people is invalid because of the color of their skin? Is it rational to say that a woman can't choose her own husband if he doesn't meet with white approval? Harrison looked uncomfortable. The law exists to maintain social order. Whose social order? The one that protects white men's property rights while denying basic human dignity to everyone else? Eleanor felt Spotted Eagle's hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. The touch gave her strength to continue. I'll make this simple for all of you, she said clearly. I am not leaving. I am not going back to your world of greed and prejudice and broken promises. This is my home now, these are my people, and Spotted Eagle is my husband in every way that matters. Eleanor, please. Thomas tried one more time. Think about your future. What kind of life can you have here? What about children? Do you want your babies to be half-breeds, never accepted by either world? Eleanor felt her temper flare again, but this time her voice was ice-cold. If I have children, they will be raised to be proud of both sides of their heritage. They will know love and acceptance and the value of treating all people with respect. That's more than most white children learn. She stepped closer to her uncle. As for my future, I'd rather live 1 year here, surrounded by people who truly care about me, than 50 years in your world of empty respectability and hollow Christianity. The soldier was growing impatient. Ma'am, you need to come with us now. We have our orders. From who? Who gave you orders to kidnap a married woman from her home? The territorial governor has authority over Indian affairs. But I'm not an Indian. I'm a white woman who chose to marry an Indian. That should make this a civil matter, not a military one. Attorney Harrison and the soldier exchanged uncertain glances. Eleanor had found a weakness in their position. Besides, Eleanor continued, how exactly do you plan to force me to leave? Are you going to tie me up and throw me over a horse? Are you going to shoot my husband and his family? Because that's what it will take. The standoff continued for several tense minutes. Eleanor could feel the warriors around her, ready to fight if necessary. She could also feel the 1 year later, Eleanor stood at the edge of Willow Creek watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Her hand rested on the gentle curve of her belly, where her and Spotted Eagle's child grew strong and healthy. She was 6 months along now, and the baby moved constantly as if eager to enter the world. So much had changed since that terrible confrontation with her uncle. Eleanor barely recognized the frightened woman she had once been. The person standing by the creek this morning was confident, capable, and completely at peace with her choices. The baby is restless this morning, Spotted Eagle said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Just like his father, Eleanor laughed, leaning back against her husband's chest, always ready for action. You think it's a boy? White Moon Woman says so. She claims she can tell by the way I'm carrying. And what do you think? Eleanor considered the question. I think it doesn't matter. Boy or girl, this child will be loved and wanted and raised to be proud of who they are. Spotted Eagle kissed the top of her head. Have I told you lately how much I love you? Only every day. Eleanor turned in his arms. But I don't mind hearing it again. The past year had brought many challenges but also many blessings. True to his word, Uncle Thomas had not given up his efforts to reclaim Eleanor. He had sent lawyers, government officials, and even missionaries to try to convince her to return to white society. Each attempt had failed, and each failure had only strengthened Eleanor's resolve to stay where she belonged. The most serious threat had come in the fall, when rumors spread that the territorial government was planning to force all the Lakota bans onto reservations. For weeks, the tribe had prepared for the possibility of conflict or relocation. Eleanor had thrown herself into the preparations with the same determination she brought to everything else in her new life. She had helped cache supplies, care for weapons, and prepare for whatever might come. When some of the older women suggested that she might be safer returning to the white settlement temporarily, Eleanor had looked at them as if they had lost their minds. "This is my family," she had said simply. "I go where my family goes." In the end, their particular band had been spared the forced relocation, partly because Spotted Eagle's reputation as a peaceful leader and skilled negotiator had earned them special consideration from the territorial officials. But the experience had shown Eleanor how precarious their way of life really was. It had also shown her how completely she had become part of the Lakota community. During the weeks of uncertainty, she had never once considered abandoning her new family to save herself. The thought simply hadn't occurred to her. Now, as she prepared to bring a new life into this complicated world, Eleanor found herself thinking often about the future. What kind of world would her child inherit? How could she prepare them for the challenges of belonging to both cultures but being fully accepted by neither? "You're thinking serious thoughts again," Spotted Eagle observed. "I'm always thinking serious thoughts these days. It comes with carrying the next generation." "Tell me," Eleanor sighed. "I'm worried about the baby, about what kind of life they'll have. People like my uncle will never accept them as white, and some people here will always see them as mixed blood rather than fully Lakota. Some people will always find reasons to judge others, but some people will also see past those things, to the person underneath. How do we teach a child to be strong enough to face that kind of prejudice?" Spotted Eagle was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "We teach them the same lessons our parents taught us, that who you are matters more than what others think you are. That family is not just about blood, but about love and loyalty and shared values. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to do what's right despite the fear." Eleanor nodded. Those were good lessons. The same lessons she had learned during her own transformation from fearful outsider to confident member of the community. "There's something else," she said. "I've been thinking about names." "Oh?" "If it's a boy, I'd like to call him David, after my father. But I want him to have a Lakota name too. And if it's a girl, Rebecca, after my mother, with a Lakota name as well." Spotted Eagle smiled. "Names from both worlds, I like that. I want our children to know where they came from, all of where they came from, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the painful. They will. We'll make sure of it." Later that morning, Eleanor was working with the other women, preparing food for the upcoming harvest celebration, when a familiar figure appeared at the edge of camp. But this time, it wasn't her uncle or his lawyers. It was Reverend Williams, the kind preacher who had arranged her marriage to Spotted Eagle. Eleanor set down her work and went to greet him, curious about what had brought him so far from town. "Reverend Williams, what a surprise to see you here." The old preacher looked around the camp with interest. He had never visited before, and Eleanor could see him taking in the details of daily life among the Lakota. "Eleanor, my dear, you look wonderful, absolutely radiant. Thank you. What brings you out this way?" Reverend Williams glanced around at the women working nearby. "I was hoping we could speak privately. There are some things I need to tell you." Eleanor led him to a quiet spot near the creek where they could talk without being overheard. "I'm afraid I have some difficult news," the Reverend began. "Your uncle has been stirring up trouble in town. He's convinced some of the more aggressive residents that the Lakota presence so close to the settlement is a threat." Eleanor felt her heart sink. "What kind of trouble?" "There's been talk of organizing a militia to drive the tribe away. Nothing official, mind you, but enough. Angry talk to be concerning." "Angry talk about what?" "Spotted Eagle's people have never caused any problems. They trade fairly, they keep to themselves, they've never threatened anyone. The problem isn't what they've done. The problem is what they represent to people like your uncle. They represent a different way of life, one that challenges everything. Those men believe about civilization and superiority." Eleanor rubbed her belly absently, feeling the baby move as if responding to her stress. What do you think will happen? I don't know, but I wanted to warn you, and to ask if you've considered, well, if you've considered that there might be safer places for you and your family. You mean leaving? Moving further west, perhaps, away from the settlements and the conflicts. Eleanor shook her head. Reverend, this is our home. We shouldn't have to leave because some people are too ignorant to live peacefully with their neighbors. I agree with you in principle, my dear, but sometimes principle must give way to practicality. No. Eleanor's voice was firm. I spent the first 19 years of my life letting other people's prejudices and fears control my choices. I won't do it anymore. Reverend Williams studied her face carefully. You've changed a great deal since I first met you. Yes, I have. I've learned what it means to stand up for what I believe in. And what do you believe in? Eleanor thought about the question seriously. I believe in love. I believe in family. I believe in treating all people with dignity and respect. I believe in building bridges instead of walls. Those are good beliefs, but they can be dangerous beliefs in a world full of hate and fear. Then maybe it's time to change the world. That evening, Eleanor told Spotted Eagle about her conversation with Reverend Williams. They sat by their fire watching the flames dance while they discussed what the news might mean for their future. We could move, Spotted Eagle said quietly. There are places further west where we would be safer. Do you want to move? No, this land is sacred to my people. My father is buried here and my first wife. I don't want to abandon them. Then we don't move. Eleanor, think about the baby. Think about what it would mean if violence comes here. I am thinking about the baby. I'm thinking that I want our child to grow up in a world where love is stronger than hate, where people don't have to run away from ignorance and prejudice. And if that's not the world we live in, Eleanor was quiet for a long time, watching the fire and listening to the normal sounds of the camp settling down for the night. Children laughing, adults talking quietly, the comforting sounds of a community at peace. Then we'll help create that world, she said finally, starting right here. Over the following weeks, Eleanor threw herself into a new project. If ignorance and fear were driving the conflict, then education and understanding might be the solution. She began making regular trips to town, bringing examples of Lakota crafts, foods, and traditions to share with anyone willing to listen. She talked to the women at the church, the shopkeepers, anyone who would give her a few minutes of their time. At first, people were suspicious and hostile, but Eleanor was patient and persistent. She answered questions honestly, shared stories about daily life in the camp, and gradually began to change some minds. What you're doing is dangerous, White Moon Woman warned her after one particularly difficult trip to town. Some of those people will never change their thinking. Maybe not, but some of them will, and those are the ones I'm trying to reach. Why? Does it matter so much to you? Eleanor considered the question. Because this baby I'm carrying will have to live in the world we create, and I want it to be a world where love matters more than fear.